There has been another dev Q&A on Discord. Now, I'm happy with some of the things that they talk about, but I'm getting a little bit frustrated with Discord. Sometimes it's impossible to find the previous message, and we'll go through when that's the case, but we're going to try our best to work out and understand what the questions are and the answers. Ideally, Amazon, I would do something slightly different than this format so that people can actually find the information a little bit easier. Maybe put it in an article somewhere on the website, like take all the questions, put them on an article and have it posted. But anyway, let's go through the questions and the answers. I just realized that it didn't fit on the screen, so we're gonna have to read it like this, okay? I'll tell you which one's a question and which one's the answer. So the first question is, how soon can I become a farmer and garden all day? Gardening is something that we have in exploration, and they're currently testing out variations of this, not committed to a specific vision yet. Now that was in the exploration bit, so I wouldn't expect that anytime soon. So we need to talk about the underlying context here. Season 8 is a normal season. I strongly suspect, with all of the hints and everything, that Season 9 is going to be a full-blown expansion. Probably a paid expansion. I know some of you will get a little bit annoyed by that. There's another alternative. It could maybe go free to play, but I find that unlikely. I think a paid expansion is probably the most likely thing. And it's also how they make their money. It's a buy-to-play game after all. Either way, I think what they're saying here is gardening isn't ready for that. We'll be talking about that maybe next year. We get a question about the hardcore server. They mentioned how crossplay is completely disabled. We kind of already knew that. But what's interesting is that wars are available, but you will take the deaths. So if you're an unfallen, you probably do not want to be doing a war because you're gonna die. Some interesting info though on how you get artifacts, because you don't get them in the normal way. They're actually going to be a crafting recipe, and you'll be able to get them a lot quicker. And they all come out with all the perks that are unlocked, which is good news because you can use any amount of artifacts you want on that server. So you'll be able to basically craft your ideal full artifact geared, and everybody will be in full artifact gear. I don't know, that sounds kind of fun. I'm going to skip some of the answers that are like no information. There's one about Expeditions Unleashed. The answer is like a standard PR thing. No point talking about it. But I mean, the answer to this question is huge. Will legacy servers be merged with fresh start servers, which is no longer fresh soon? In the SA region, they really need this. Now, I don't think this will happen in places like EU, but in some regions where the player base is a bit smaller, well, this is something they're actively planning for their next round of merges, and they'll have more details soon that those merges are going to happen in Season 8. I mean, yeah, as I said, I don't think that'll happen in Europe, but in places where there's too few people to have too many servers, I do see them consolidating that, because that's what they just said, right? Now, this question is interesting because I think it'll get trick raging. Are you going to nerf the fire staff? Half of the OPR teams are just fire staff spammers holding down flamethrower. Now, I don't actually agree with this question. I don't think there's that many flamethrower enjoyers. Obviously, Amazon have the data. There's a lot of fire staffs. Like, I think the fire staff is consistently like a very decent weapon. I personally wouldn't put the fire staff in the top 2 or 3 weapons right now, maybe. But for like a year or two, it's been pretty much up there. Either way, I don't fully agree with the question. That's not to say the fire staff is underpowered at all. I'm not claiming that. But they do say that we're going to make some changes to the fire staff in Season 8, and they're changing the target lock, which we already know about. They are looking into flamethrower changes. However, I don't think they're coming in Season 8. They're seeing how the balance changes affect the fire staff in Season 8 before they do anything with flamethrower. I mean, fair enough. I mean, I don't know. The flamethrower I don't think is necessarily that strong. The fire staff though is pretty damn decent. The next question is blocked my big head. The next question is actually about how 300 con and grit, the nerf to that was hurting PvE and M3s. And I think this is a change for PvP ultimately, but they thought it was too strong in PvP for certain weapons. And what's interesting here is that they're potentially going to pivot this functionality away from actually being an attribute bonus to a perk bonus. So the one that you would need on your gear, rather than everybody who just has a certain amount of con getting it. Okay, yeah, that sounds like it would be interesting. They're designing that though, so I wouldn't expect that in Season 8. Might be in Season 9. Mech also asked a question about absorption and resistant caps. They say absorption was really powerful. They toned it down because it was making some of the content trivialized. Fair enough. I don't really know too much about that. Honestly, I'm mostly just an OPR farmer at this point. I don't really do much rest of the other content because there's not really much need. However, hopefully that will change in Season 9, and we'll talk about that when we get to some interesting, juicy questions. This question, is the Void Gauntlet nerf in the near future? Void Blade right now is pretty strong. So they say this: we are addressing some Void Gauntlet power issues in Season 8 with translation, which I think is basically how easy it is to attack people. Target lock, well, they say the perk and target log. I don't know what perk they're talking about. Are they talking about life taker? Maybe, I'm not sure. And they're looking into ways to address this going forward if it continues to be an issue with our balance in Season 8. I'm not sure what they mean by the perk, but either way, I suspect we're going to get a little bit of a Void Gauntlet nerf, which, let's be honest, probably needed. The next question is about, can we get a nerf to the Ice Gauntlet? Talking about you can add it to every build and it'd be pretty decent. And that's true. There are some weapons in the game, a little bit like Rapier, Ice Gauntlet might be one of them, where you kind of put them on any class, and because of their utility, they do okay. Like, I don't think the Ice Gauntlet is particularly like top tier on its own, but it might facilitate some of the kind of gameplay that might be a little bit toxic. I personally wouldn't say or would have thought about that with the Ice Gauntlet, but you know, either way, they're looking at doing this thing where they have certain abilities that have power outside of damage and hopefully trying to scale that with the attributes. So I think I'm going to speak for them here. They don't actually say this, but like Entomb, maybe the duration of Entomb or the strength of Entomb could be based on how many attributes you have. Therefore, you can't just pick it up and use it for its utility unless you're spec'd into that kind of thing. But they're not doing it in Season 8 because I think they're making some other changes. Obviously, they're not going to reveal what those changes are right here because they have a rather sizable balance pass coming in Season 8. The next question is one that I am kind of interested in, even though I don't play as a healer. The question is, are there going to be any more options when it comes to healing? And they speak about how they did have the Life Staff, the Void Gauntlet, and the Flail, but because the Life Staff healing is so strong, if you put more healing on the Flail or the Void Gauntlet, it basically boosts the Life Staff, right? Because you will take both of them and you'll be incredibly strong. So they kind of nerfed the healing on those. The power was just too high, they say here. They are looking at making these weapons a little bit more viable though, without then combining with the Life Staff to make it too strong. And I think some of the issue is, like, imagine the Void Gauntlet was doing a lot of healing, and you could play like Void Gauntlet and you were healing and you were doing a shed ton of DPS. Obviously nobody wants that. So they've got a little bit of a, you know, a small path to walk with this one to make sure it's not overpowered. But I would like to see more variety in healing. I think healers probably would like that. I don't know if we're ever going to get to a point where you can be a main healer with a flail, but it sounds kind of cool. This next question is, well, I'd actually, it just says, will the seasonal characters be able to be transferred? The Season 7 ones on the PvP server, they can be. They're going to any server of your choice, basically. But the PvE hardcore mode, that's a temporary server and your character isn't sticking around, which they say it's because of the boost and stuff like that. I do think it would have been nice maybe they could have kept your character around, because I think something with hardcore is that you want to always look at your achievement and your achievement will effectively be taken away. So I think it's a little bit sad that they're doing that, but I get why. The Old Crown artifact wasn't listed what kind of weight it was, the one that's like 10 plus attributes. Turns out it's a medium helm. This one is about artifacts and how many they're making. Like, are they going to redo some of the old ones that were a bit garbage? And are they just going to keep pumping? And they say they're slowing down a little bit and currently planned in Season 9, although obviously these numbers are subject to change, is that they're going to rework 3 and add 3. I'm okay with that. I think if you have way too many artifacts, you're going to end up with just a load of them that aren't getting used. Kind of feels like we're approaching the end of artifacts in that sense, but it does confirm that in the next progression update, artifacts will still be relevant. This next question is talking about like reworking attributes. Now, they don't really go into too much detail here, but they do say we are currently discussing attribute changes to coincide with our planned progression overhaul. Basically, it sounds like in Season 9, they are going to alter the way that we progress in New World, the way we get gear and the way we get items. And that's important for me because I've pretty much always said for the long time that progression in New World has been pretty garbage and it remains pretty garbage. So a complete overhaul here, definitely something I'm interested in seeing. And you can save your attributes to your gear slots, which is cool. They're actually going to add a 6th character slot for Season 8. And I'm assuming it's going to stay, but this character won't stay. So yeah, there's a couple of questions like this asking about Mutation 3 being completely pointless because, you know, even though they added that new reward, it's very ineffective. Like, the chance of getting a good item is way too small and the amount of effort involved is way too high. They're looking at this in Season 8. They're going to make it so that some stuff, I think like the damage dies are going to drop from the mutations as well. They're going to shrink down the amount of mats you need and all this kind of stuff. If you do M3s, then I think you will actually now be able to get a decent item from it. Whether or not it'll make M3s worth doing, I don't know. There's going to be a leaderboard for speedrunning the Hive of Gorgon on the seasonal server, on the hardcore PvE. I keep saying PvE, it's not PvE technically, you can flag up right, but on the hardcore server. Eventually that'll come to the main game. Character names being able to be changed, not currently being worked on at the moment. I don't want to lose my spot in Discord, but I think this question is talking about Expeditions Unleashed. I think the open world bosses are going to have the gear that they normally drop but up leveled, which makes sense. Sounds cool. Confirmation here, I think that the prismatics are not in the M3 recipes because they've cut them. This is a big one because it kind of puts in perspective what to expect. we are fully expecting a complete new zone with new mobs and all that kind of stuff. But when they talk about a zone up level like Reekwater, they're talking about it more in the same style as Cutlass Keys, not Elysium Wild. So it's going to be sort of the same map, but the mobs will get higher level, slight changes, nothing completely, you know, crazy. And the quest that'll take you through it. That new zone though is going to have multiple development content pieces tied to it. I wouldn't be surprised if that like infinite expedition things that they were hinting at might be in the new zone, and that's the only way to get into it. Obviously it might be in the menu, but that'll be where it's probably located, maybe, and some other stuff, who knows. There are some questions where the answer is basically like, nah, not now. One of them is like, are you going to put PvP in elite zones? It's like, no. Are you going to give us 4 houses instead of 3? And it's like, not right now because it messes with trophies, but maybe at some point, yes, but not right now. Like combat lag, they had a combat log at some point, but it was sort of causing too much lag basically. So they're thinking about maybe doing a simple one when you die to tell you what you died to. Yeah, okay, makes sense. One question here is about bugs, like your game buggy, and they're like, we're trying to fix it. Of course they're going to say that, right? The next one is talking about like matchmaking in PvP, and they do say they want to improve the quality of matchmaking, and this to me kind of implies that healers are still very, 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 very strong. So they say in the future they want to make sure key roles like healers are balanced between teams. That matters the most in somewhere like Arena, where the difference between one healer and no healer is extreme. Now, whilst you can win a game where if the enemy has a healer and you don't have a healer and you all focus that healer, you can win those games, right? But what this suggests to me, the fact that they use the word extreme, is that the win rate with those healers is much, much, much higher than 50%. Obviously, I don't have the percentage here, but it does kind of suggest that healers still very, very strong, especially in PvP. They do say that they're going to make it so that they want one healer on each side and the number of healers are balanced. I mean, they have that information right now. Why are they not using it? I'm a bit surprised by that. I would have thought that was in you know, something they were trying to do right now. It might be something they're trying. Maybe they're failing. Well, they are failing, because if you ever go into Outpost Rush, sometimes you see like an entire team with like 5 healers and then the other team has 0. And actually the one team that has 5 healers are all in the same group. Gets a little bit silly at times. This to me suggests we are going to get an expansion with a level increase and a gear score increase. Will there be an increase in leveling beyond level 65 in the future season? And they say yes. I have to assume that the plan is when we get the expansion that they will do this. Now, obviously, they're not going to say this is happening in Season 9 because they want you to actually play the game right now. But I have to presume that Season 9 is going to be a classic expansion with a level increase, gear score increase, professions also going up, etc. Because they say it's coming, it's just a matter of when. They say under consideration for the future. Now, does that mean it's this expansion? It could be next. I'd kind of assume it was now, though. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not sure exactly, but I mean, I kind of feel it, but maybe it won't be. Now, this next answer I actually like. Will there be mutation variants of the Hive as well as in Expeditions? And she says, there are currently no plans to add mutations to the Hive of the Gorgons. I don't really want mutations in the raid. I think the Gorgon raid is some of the best content we've had in New World ever. And I think the only thing that should happen to that is that you allow more people in if they want to, like a story mode kind of thing. Some people are going to be like, oh, I want it to be super duper difficult. But the reality is the more content you make for a very small percentage of people, the less everybody else plays. Now, I do think there's a whole history of New World not having a culture of PvE guilds. Yes, some PvE guilds have existed, but it's predominantly been like war companies and then groups of maybe 5 to 15 people all doing mutations. This culture of a raid night, which exists in a lot of MMOs, hasn't really existed in New World, so it's kind of hard to get people to do it. So I think like a story mode would make sense. An easy mode, a hard mode, well, an easy and a normal mode maybe. You can do a hard mode, but then I do worry about, again, too much content that most people can't do. Either way, no mutations. I actually would prefer just straight up difficulty. I actually don't like mutations full stop. I think mutations in dungeons are pretty stupid. I'd rather it just be literally difficulty modes with curated mechanics rather than random stuff where it's like, you can't dodge. I just find that a bit, I don't know, boring to me. Now, the answer here to this question about wars and open world PvP and casual wars and all this stuff, it's very interesting. Minor concern, but let's just read it. So they say, we agree wars are too exclusive right now and it's hard to break into, especially for small companies. We are discussing options for providing both a way for companies to challenge each other to wars without territory being at stake, effectively practice wars, although maybe you could actually have like a ranked mode to that, maybe. As well as a way for people who may not even be in a company to participate in wars, effectively curable wars. That I'm okay with. It's the next bit that kind of worries me. We are also discussing ways to allow other modes to be fully organized, like allowing pre-made raid groups in LPR. Now, I assume they mean pre-made raid group fighting against another pre-made raid group, which I'm completely down for. I actually sick, and some of the PvP guilds would love that. Obviously, they shouldn't be in the normal Outpost Rush. In fact, pre-mades are still very strong in Outpost Rush, and I still think maybe there should be a solo queue in Outpost Rush, especially in the Bare Bones mode. That'd be pretty dope as well. But yeah, still pre-mades are very strong. I don't think they're saying here we should have like a 20-man stack versus all solo queue players. I think they mean 20-man stack versus 20-man stack, which would be pretty cool. Although maybe not even 20-man, right? Maybe you could do it for Capture the Flag. That'd be really cool, because then it's only 10 people and that feels a little bit more attainable. General question here about, you know, how many new monsters and stuff like that. They're not going to give you any answer, but they do say the next major release will have new creatures, and that'll be in the new zone. They do say a new raid, which I've got to say is very exciting. So it does kind of confirm that a raid is coming, I think, in season 9 as well as the modes. I've said before, and it smells like absolute pure copium. I'm almost tempted to get the glasses out for this one. In fact, let's do it. I think season 9 will be the best update New World has ever had. Okay, I think I might be a little bit on too high on copium there. I don't think that necessarily means it'll save the game or anything, but I think season 9 is going to be an absolute banger. They're not going to get into details on how many this is and what it is, but still, I'm excited to see it. Right, now we come to the issue of messages could not be loaded. I can't, like, even if I click these, I can't find the original message. I scrolled all the way up and I just can't find it, right? I tried everything that people have suggested. I googled it, I ChatGPT'd it, I ain't finding it. So we're just gonna have to wing some of the questions by inferring it from the answer. One question here is about like underwater swimming. They say it's cool and all, but then you have the issue of like populating the underwater and combat. This next answer is pretty cool because they say we like the fact that you can kind of like snipe Baron, but we make it so that you can't snipe it from like a trillion miles away. I kind of like that as well, but what they are saying that is if you are ahead, then the Baron is gonna do less for you. It's basically gonna it's basically going to not last as long to make it so you don't get stomped. I mean, well, if you're being like completely stomped, it doesn't matter, right? Like if it's 900 to 100, it doesn't matter. But if you're like 500 to 300 and the 500 team gets Baron, you're kind of like, oh, that's probably GG. Maybe now it's not GG. So that's possibly a good change. Again, I don't know what the question is, but they've talked about adding perhaps more of a mastery system to abilities. I wouldn't expect this anytime soon, but they're looking at ways of creating more gameplay affecting ability perks in the future. Again, I don't know if this is season 9 or season 8, and I don't know what the question is. Please don't do this on Discord, do this on the website or something. They're fixing the visual effects apparently in the raids and the dungeons and stuff like that. One of the reasons we stopped doing the raid, but apparently that's coming in season 8. This question is all about balance, right? How easy or difficult it is to balance, and how sometimes they'll buff something that's not very used and it doesn't change because the meta is so ingrained. They said they would like to come up with a way that makes it easier and incentivizes players to like change the builds, which I think is one thing, right? Like if you want to play a different build, even if you're like 725 bis, like changing your entire set to get like proper bis gear is just it's a nightmare, right? It makes sense because you're effectively, well, you're not starting from scratch, but you've got to go and be like, okay, I've got to go get this gear with all these perks. Maybe you're like a tanky boy, you want to be a light armor boy. I mean, it's completely different gear, completely different perks, and you don't even know if you're going to like that build. And if you try it without the perks and stuff like that, you're going to get wrecked. Yeah, so hopefully they're going to address some of those issues. They talk about a little bit how the attribute saving to your gear score will work. I sort of want it to be an option. I think sometimes you might not want to change your attributes. But what they're going to say is that when you save your attributes to your gear set, it'll take like a snapshot and you'll change between them, and I don't think there'll be a cost. There could be problems there where you actually want to change gear, but you don't want to change attributes. I don't know if anybody would want to do that, but maybe. Depending on what food you have, for example, perhaps. Oh, yo, I hadn't actually seen this question. Any plans for a solo queue outpost rush the same way you do a bare bones outpost rush? Yeah, what about you make bare bones solo queue? Like that, yeah, do that. They say there are no plans for this, but I mean, there should be. I still think pre-mades are very strong. The matchmaking, in theory, if you are pre-maded, is supposed to take that into account and give you a little bit like, because you're pre-maded, you've got a higher score, and we're going to compare you against players now to balance that. But I mean, it don't feel like it's working to me, but they say it's in the spirit of bare bones. Yeah, I'd like to see it. Do it now. Basically talk about here how they would consider maybe like private arenas. I would like that, right? I genuinely think that if this would have been 4 years ago before the game had come out and they said we're going to have this like private matchmaking arena system and you have your spectator cam that's coming in season 8, I mean, New World as an esport would have been pretty cool. Obviously now that idea is kind of laughable, but yeah, I would have loved to have seen stuff like that. Imagine we could actually make events on stream, and private companies could do stuff like this where you get your people together, you pair them together, and then you can make like a big spectator spectacle of it. Yeah, it would have been cool. They speak here about how sometimes you don't get 725 gear from a lot of the old content, and they do talk about how this is one of the primary motivators behind the progression overhaul that's coming. Again, presumably in season 9. Don't know what that is. Obviously, details of that are non-existent right now. But I think it's going to be very, very, very important. They talk about how they might make changing perks easier than what currently exists. Right now, I think like it should be, once you've put your first perk in there, changing the perk should be like, I don't know, a tenth of the cost or something. It really shouldn't be that expensive on artifacts, named weapons, etc. I feel like we've seen this question for like 3.5 years. Are there any plans to reset territory control points, the distribution? No. They've been saying we might consider this for literally 3.5 years. I mean, it's sort of important, but like just not important enough for anybody to really care about it. Doesn't really matter if I have a little bit more storage in a turn or I have some XP boost that I no longer need. There's a question here about artisan flatbread and stuff like that because the timer was 40 seconds. There was one where the flatbread was originally like lower con. It was like 40 con or something like that. I don't know if that's fixed now. I've not tried it because my fresh character doesn't have the ability to actually cook them, but apparently it's getting fixed, the duration at least. The next question is kind of just a general question about grit. I think it's sort of talking about maybe like the hatchet and stuff like that. You know, weapons where you just stand there and you've got loads of grit. I don't actually know if the hatchet does that. I don't know if they're running high enough con. They're probably not, to be honest. But there's going to be a balance interplay change regarding that. I don't know what it is. We'll see when it actually hits the patch notes. There's obviously a question here about soul trials, but Discord won't load it because it's Discord. They say they don't have anything to share about it right now. I think what they should do in the short term for Season 8 before the progression overall is simply just buff the gold. I think it's literally like 25 gold. Make it 300 gold, and then people probably maybe do it like, it literally takes 5 minutes. Yeah, just let me do a soul trial, get 300 gold, and I'd possibly do it. Right now, I've done maybe 2 in my entire existence. Completely pointless. They speak here about, I think, effectively why the casual invasion mode was removed from, it was initially, I think, in development, and then they moved it back to exploration. They talk about how it was simply more costly to do it, so they moved it back. It's something they still want to do, but other things started taking center stage, like the capture the flag mode. Which for some people who really wanted that is sad, right? But practically speaking, it makes sense. Pick-up wars are coming. I mean, finally, they're on the mode's short-term list. So, I mean, maybe that's Season 9, maybe it's Season 10, but it's coming. They do say that our goal with the new zone drops is to have a reward structure in place that makes all endgame activities viable. I'm excited about this new progression. Like, it sounds like the underlying thing here is that it sounds like there's going to be a progression change, and that's incredibly important for New World. It might be too little too late, but better late than never. I'm just using platitudes here, but I agree with that. In that new zone, by the way, there's going to be new quests, new story. To me, that's sounding like a classic expansion. I don't know about you. Maybe it's not. They do say that they're not actually going to continue any of the Silver Crows content right now. Instead, they're going to extend the main story quest. And what I actually think they should do, and I hope they're doing this, I don't know if they are, but every season, why is there not like a little bit of a story to move the story forward so that every season somebody wants to come back, play maybe like an hour's worth of questing and get a little bit of a hit of a cutscene, a story or something like that, that gets you excited for the next story. And then the expansion is where the big story is unveiled. Now, I understand that part of the problem might be for like a new player who's like catching up, but just don't put anything behind the story. Don't put any unlocks behind the story. Just make it so it's actually just fun. That's what I would do. Maybe that's what they are going to do. Moving on, they talk about how influence towers might get a little bit of a change. Influence towers with the siege building. I don't think they're talking about how this is going to work in detail, but they say they might be able to like build upon the actual influence tower and stuff like that. Sounds really cool. Hopefully everybody can be involved. Yeah, it sounds good though. I don't know. I mean, we don't know what they're cooking up there, but it sounds like they're cooking something. Kay at the end getting asked if it's like pew pew or sleepy, and then she says pom-poms baby BB. I'm not sure. I still think pom-poms is like daggers to me. Pistols, not daggers, it's like pistols to me. Pom. Maybe I'm just cooking. I'm reading too much into that. Maybe overall though, there's some interesting answers here. I wouldn't say anything is completely revolutionary, but it does very strongly suggest we're getting a complete progression overhaul, some big balance changes to like Void Blade and stuff like that, fire staff as well, ice gauntlet maybe a little bit. I suspect the balance pass will be vast though. I wouldn't get hung up if your favorite weapon's not been nerfed. Hey, it might be. I'm looking at you, Sword and Shield, Spear, and Joys. That's me. I don't know why I'm looking at you. I'm literally just looking in the mirror. But I think the progression update, it sounds like the expansion is going to be a proper expansion to me. New quest, new zone, new raid, new modes, new mobs, level increase, gear score increase. It sounds like that's all happening. I said it earlier. I'm going to say it again. Season 9, I think, will be New World's biggest, best update we've ever had. Breathe it in. Breathe it in. That doesn't mean I think the game is saved. Like, I think there's a long... I mean, no, I simply just don't think the game is saved. I don't think we're going to hit the heavy heights of, you know, launch or anything like that. I use this analogy on stream a little bit. I think Amazon games are finally cooking, but a lot of people have already left the restaurant. A lot of people have ditched the restaurant. They said, I can't wait for this food. It's taking too long. But there's a few of us who are in the restaurant being like, please, sir, give me some food. And Amazon Games have literally just turned on the stove. But 99% of people are already out of the restaurant and are looking for somewhere else to eat. I think even if they make the best Michelin-starred meal, I don't know if those people will come back. I think it's kind of too late. But we'll see. It really does feel like to me now that they are cooking and they are making content. Now they've finished the reworking MSQ, now they've done console. Yeah, they're making actual content. They're probably doing this because they're not ready to actually make stuff for Lord of the Rings yet. That's probably in like pre-production. So let's just enjoy it while we have it. I think season 9 is going to be a banger. Season 8's a bit meh, but the previews are cool. Nothing too much in the Q&A, but I mean, it gets me excited, but obviously they don't reveal anything completely crazy. Let me know your thoughts though in the comments below. Have a beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.